Hi, I'm Alex Elle, and I write books for a living. The Hey Girl podcast was created with sisterhood and storytelling in mind. Hey girl.
Hey girl.
Hey girl.
Hey girl.
I'll be sitting down with some phenomenal women to discuss love.
I believe we grew distant out of love of some type, I don't want to hurt you.
Loss.
Really don't know what's going to trigger that feeling of grief in any moment.
And a topic very important to my work, self-care.
Freedom is self-care. It's not about pedicures, it's not about clothing, it's not about trips.
Join us as we journey through sharing together. Today on the show, I am fangirling. I have one of my favorite jewelry designers talking with me about her journey to entrepreneurship, self-care, and everything else in between. Marla Elle and her locks are innovative. I am thrilled for you guys to hear more about how her brand came to be. This is Marla's story. Hey, girl.
Hey girl.
Marla, it is so good to have you on the show. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Alex. I'm very excited to talk to you.
I'm excited too. So let's dive in. Can you please introduce yourself to the Hey Girl listeners with who you are and what you do?
My name is Marla Elle, and I am a jewelry designer based in New York City. I make a series of locks and chains, and they connect in interesting ways. And I'm a mother and a wife and a sister and a daughter, etc.
So let me just say I'm a huge fan of the locks, as you know, and I think I found you through Henry Dominique on Instagram.
Oh, yes.
And I was just like, those are amazing. What are those? Who makes them? And how can I get my hands on them? So I want to talk with you about why locks and how that idea was birthed.
So, I mean, it was birthed a long time ago, much older than the company. I started the company officially almost 6 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, I worked in the world of marketing and communications. My last job was for a big multinational corporation, but I was obsessed with jewelry, deeply obsessed with jewelry, and deeply obsessed with hardware. So both equally, and also looking for creative outlets in my life, because you work hard and all day long. And I was also a single mom at one point, and I bring that up because I think when you go through like a struggling time in your life or a difficult time, I think it can really take you to the brink creatively in a good way.
Yeah.
Do you feel that too?
Oh, all the way. Feel it all the way.
Yeah. So, my evenings were spent manically, making things when I wasn't at work. And my lunch hour, I would spend on 47th Street with my locks and with my things, trying, 47th Street is the jewelry district in New York. Okay. So I spent a lot of time here, learning and teaching myself. And at a certain point, I realized that by morphing the shape, I could create something that was fine and perfect and connected and very much rooted in sort of Victorian and Georgian jewelry, which is also a passion of mine, but yet starkly modern. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how that happened. And so I was making the locks for 15 years before I actually launched the company. And then after a particularly horrific business trip to France, true story, I decided that I'm just going to do this. I'm throwing in the towel of my job, and I'm going to throw my hat in the ring for my business. And that's kind of how it started.
So I want to talk about being a single mom and transitioning from corporate America to a creative career, but also just taking that leap of faith when you have someone else in the equation. I was a single mom for 5 years, and then I met my now husband, and he's been in me and Charlie, my oldest daughter's life, since she was 5. Well, 4, really.
It's a similar story.
Yeah.
We have a similar story.
Yeah.
So.
And I just, I always want to hear from women who have similar stories. Like, how did you find the courage to be like, forget this job. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not going to be broken down and unhappy. I'm going to fly and see if the longings of my heart can come to fruition, even though you have a little person on your coattails, depending on you. So how was that for you? Did you have any fear, or were you just like, I got this?
I mean, I guess I have to say, I was already married, but there was still deep, we were definitely a dual income family.
Yeah.
And there was, giving up my salary was a huge consideration.
Yeah.
And it was a huge risk. And anytime, I can't underestimate that. It was definitely a risk. And my husband's really cautious, and he was certainly concerned, but he basically said, you can give this thing a year and you can't put a penny into it. This has to be, you have to build it from scratch. I mean, it was a tall order.
Wow.
So we went very slowly. I mean, Alex, we only as a company moved out of my house a few months ago into our real offices, which is surprising to people, but we've worked at them. I've been very cautious.
Wow.
And I would tell everyone to be very cautious.
Yeah.
And the other thing I would say to people, and I'm sure you've experienced this, is when people say to me, as I'm sure they say to you often, oh gosh, I would just love to do what you've done. I need to come up with the idea. But for me, it wasn't like that. It wasn't like, I had this thing was like a burning passion. Like, I have to do this. Like, I wasn't searching for something to find something to get me out.
Right.
I was in all, you know what I mean?
In already. Yeah. Yeah.
So you can't do it to find yourself.
I love that you said that, because a lot of people have said that to me too. Like, how did you get started? Like, I'm 28, so I've been writing since I can remember, right? And then I worked, and I had my daughter very young. I was 18, and I worked and went to school, and it wasn't just this thing where, oh, I'm going to be an author. I didn't even know that I was going to be an author. I just started turning my passion that had already been there, my burning passion, into books. And that's because I wanted other people to find their voice through writing and through my storytelling. But a lot of folks, especially with social media being a thing now, feel as though entrepreneurship or businesses or brands are overnight transitions, and they're not.
No.
I had a best-selling book out while I was working in the nonprofit sectors in DC, and it took me a long time to pursue my passion, even though I already had this thing, on my heart and in the world. And it wasn't an easy transition, but I was cautious and I planned. And of course, it's a risk that you take going into business for yourself. But if it's burning on your heart and you think it through and you're realistic about what you can deliver, that in itself can be the moving and motivating factor. So,
yeah.
So when
there's no such thing as an overnight.
No.
Like this has not been an overnight, success by any stretch. It definitely grew beyond my wildest, dreams. Like, and we're creatively at our peak. I don't know if it's our peak, but like we keep like churning out new ideas and new things, and that's very exciting for the company. But it was by no means an overnight situation. And there was the first year I consulted in my previous field while I launched this. I mean, I was a little terrified to completely, cut the cord.
Yeah. So, do you remember how it felt to hold your first lock in your hand?
Yeah, I have it. I wear it
Wow.
every day. Um, yeah, I was super excited. I realized, I think the first one was super exciting, but every single one is super exciting. And the newer pieces that we're making that incorporate the same technology it is even more exciting. And how we have refined our process as an organization, that really excites me. Like how we make them is unique to us. Like
Yeah.
no one does it just the way we do. I mean, there's just so many things that I find exciting about it, you know?
So, I want to circle back to Lock Your Mom. I want you to talk.
Mm,
I love it. Love it so much.
thank
But I
you.
want you to share where Lock Your Mom came from and how it resonates with you on a personal level.
Okay, so when I was a single mom, Mother's Day, I felt was such a bittersweet day.
Mm.
And I would, especially like when you have a small child, you're alone. And for when you have a toddler, like, your toddler loves you all the time, but sort of this public celebration of Mother's Day and Father's Day,
Mm-hmm.
I think for single parent households, it can be very bittersweet. It's especially when the children are young. And I thought, what can I do? And as soon as the business and being a single mom was a very trying time in my life, emotionally, intellectually, economically,
Mm-hmm.
in every conceivable way. It was hard. And I always felt that if my business had any degree of success or ability to help others, that I wanted to do something for single moms. And I recognize that doing what we do, giving a lock away, is not, changing the universe, but it is a very small thing that appears to have a bigger impact than I even anticipated.
Mm.
So the first year we did it 3 years ago, we gave away 50 on Mother's Day.
Wow.
And it felt really good. So actually we didn't stop. We kept giving away more even after Mother's Day because we kept getting letters. And then the next year we gave more. And then this year on Mother's Day we gave 300, but probably for the whole year we've given 500, around that number. And it's beyond. The letters that we get are, the male guy who works in an office with a single mom who writes us a note saying, she's this lady that I work with. I see her rushing out every night and she's so panicked. Will you please send her one of your locks, but make it anonymous? Which really just, I find very touching.
Yeah.
That a guy noticed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
It goes from that to a woman who runs a safe haven for battered women, reaching out to us and saying, I really don't know who to choose. I know you don't have an unlimited amount. Every one of these women here are single moms. And it would change their whole perspective to get one of your locks. And we just, we fall to the floor and we send them each one,
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's sort of like that. The stories that we hear, we don't share them all because they're private, and we don't make people tell a story. But I think when I realized that the whole single mom experience cut across economics, race, everything,
Mm-hmm.
that this feeling
Mm-hmm.
was, in a bizarre set of circumstances, I was invited to a fancy dinner in New York that I had no business being at, and I sat next to a celebrity. And I found it when I went to sit down and realized that I was sitting next to this celebrity woman, I was like pretty terrified. Like, what do I have to talk to this woman about? Like, my God, like, how did this even happen? This is a mistake.
Wow.
So I'm sitting next to her and I didn't know what I was going to talk to her about. And well, Alex, I mean, as a mother, within a matter of seconds, we were talking about our children. And then within a matter of seconds, we were commiserating. I was no longer a single mother, but she was, and how lonely she felt.
Wow.
And I was like, no way. Like, part of me, that's what I was saying in my head, like, no way could this woman be feeling this. But then I thought, yes way. She has every resource at her disposal, but yet this experience of being the only decision maker and having these small people that she, when she wasn't working, she was with them and there was no one celebrating that, So that's when I really said we have to do the Single Mom Project. And it's not about just giving economically disadvantaged people, women, this lock, but anyone. So if you know, love, or are a single mom, let us know. And that's, anyway, I've talked too much about it, but that's it. And it's very close to my heart.
You have not talked too much about it. Keep talking about it, because this is so necessary. And even though we're not single mothers anymore, there are still so many, and they need to be celebrated and deserved to be celebrated. And offering a lock it can be monumental, and just offering that love and support and that I see you can be life changing. So I commend you for that. And I love the Lock Your Mom project, and my mom has nominated a friend or two. She loves you as well. And
that's so great.
And she, I'm so just thrilled by you sharing that bit, and it's never too much to share. We really need these stories. So to shift gears just a little bit, you mentioned earlier that you were madly in love with jewelry. And I want to know if you have your very first memory of falling in love with jewelry.
My grandmother, who is now 94, had a piece of jewelry, which is a silver necklace that is a George Jensen piece. He's a famous jeweler. But the piece itself was designed by a woman named Astrid Fogg in the 60s. And it's a large heart on a large chain. I mean, it's kind of gigantic and hollow. So it makes a lot of noise. And it was given, first of all, I remember sitting on her lap and holding it. And secondly, she gave it to me, and there is a bite mark in it. So I may have also put it in my mouth as a child. And now it's mine. So I would say that's my first memory. But the true question really isn't, do I remember my first memory with jewelry? It's more, do I have any memories without jewelry? And no, I don't. And it's like, the more the question is, I don't remember when I didn't love jewelry.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
One more thing to add to that.
Yes.
When I went to my 20th high school reunion, one of my good friends from high school was there, who I hadn't seen in years. And she shows up and she's wearing like this straggly piece of string with like this weird little crystal thing on it. And she holds it up and she's like, "You don't even remember this." And I'm like, "No, what is it?" She goes, "You made this for me when we were in 8th grade. And I was like, "Oh." She's like, "So this jewelry thing that you're telling people is new? It's not new."
That's amazing. So oftentimes these passions that we have are nestled in us from such young ages. Like I was the guest on my podcast on Sunday, and I talked about how entrepreneurship and writing has just been embedded in me since middle school. And some thoughts came up that I had never even thought of in my 20s. And I was just like, it's so interesting that is where my passion from X, Y, and Z came from. So it's always great to hear those stories of, things that we think are new, but they've really been in us forever.
That's right.
So as a woman in business, of course, I have to talk about self-care and how you're making time for you and how you're filling yourself up so you can fill up those around you, your employees, your husband, your son. How has that been, especially since you guys have been growing so rapidly over the past few years? Where does self-care play a role in your life?
So, I mean, I don't know how good I am on the scale of good, but I will tell you that I regularly exercise and believe very strongly in exercise, and I exercise rather intensely.
Mm-hmm.
So you may have seen my headstand series on Instagram, but I do high intensity training. I do yoga. I stand on my head every day. I don't know if it qualifies as self-care or self-torture, but I do all of that. I work out. I eat pretty healthy and make sure my family eats pretty healthy as much as I can control them.
Right.
I wear makeup most of the time and wash my face.
That's self-care. No, that is self-care. I literally just said the other day, washing my face has been my form of self-care recently because, I don't get to really dive into other things as often because I have a 5-month-old at home. So self-care looks very different. It doesn't look
That's right.
the same. So, I take my time. I wash my face. I eat healthy if I can, when I don't have Oreos on the counter because my 10-year-old loves Oreos, and then I end up eating a whole sleeve of Oreos. So it's just
right.
Self-care looks so different for everybody. And as a woman in business, I think it's really important that we share these moments, even if it's not traditional or whatever, quote unquote, right, or how society views self-care should look, because now, if you think about it, self-care is packaged in this very weird way. Everybody is talking about self-care, but oftentimes it leaves people broke or feeling like it's not accessible. So
yeah, I also think, Alex, I think your point right now that this whole self-care industry can seem unattainable and off-putting and expensive. Mm-hmm. And I think that's truly problematic. Yeah. I mean, I don't think that's the way it has to be. It should be something that's accessible and human. Mm-hmm. You may have experienced this when you had your children, but, there's the breastfeeding mafia of, it's sort of the self-care industry is sort of similar to that, mm-hmm, right? If you're not breastfeeding, then there's something wrong with you, or the length of time you're breastfeeding, or, and self-care is probably similar. Like these are, if you're not going to yoga every day, right, or eating eating bowls,
or acai bowls, or eating a bunch of kale, right, raw,
and the green juice,
right?
Right, then you're somehow an unhealthy person. I just think it's too over the top. It's crazy.
It can be crazy. Yeah, no, all the way. I'm with you all the way. So as we wrap up this conversation, I would love for you to share something along the lines of encouraging women to find their voice through whatever creative outlet. Because I love how you mentioned that even though you were working in corporate America, you still had this baby. You still had your Marla Aaron locks. You were still burning with passion to birth it and bring it to fruition. Even in the midst of working, being a mother, and being a wife. Do you have any words you can offer to people who may be in that same space but just don't know how to feed both?
I think creativity begets creativity, and I also don't think it's the province of one type of person. Like you're a very creative person. I think everybody is creative, and it's like a muscle. I mean, people have heard this a million times, but it's actually true. Just do something, do anything, make eggs, cooking any creativity anything that you can do, you can bring creativity to. In a time when I really couldn't afford to be being creative with jewelry, I was frantically running around my son's bedroom, painting his bedroom with, paints that I bought at the local drugstore, and, using cans as my stencils.
Wow.
Like I was doing, I was knitting. I unraveled a blanket that I had, and I taught myself how to knit on YouTube. So, the resource of the internet is totally incredible. You can teach yourself to do virtually anything if you put your mind to it, and it's kind of fun and wonderful. And in fact, my husband, who has a very non-creative kind of job, is actually one of the most creative people I know. And he's creative because he takes the time to teach himself new things all the time. Like whether it be teaching himself to play the saxophone, teaching himself, to do yoga. So there's this misperception of what makes a creative person. And I really think it's not the province of one, it's the province of us all. So
I love that. I think that's a great way to end. Thank you so much, Marla, for your time today. I'm thrilled for this episode to air.
Bye-bye.
Bye. If you want to connect with Marla more and learn more about her jewelry, you can do so on Instagram at Marla Aaron. That's MarlaAaron. The Hey Girl podcast is a member of the District Productive, produced by Paul Woody Woodhall and me, Alex Elle. Music by DC's own Kokai.